What a beautiful day to be alive, to be outside, to be free. What a beautiful, blessed day to cry freedom. I promise, I wrote a speech, y'all, I did. But in the past few days, it became clear to me that what I came to say wasn't going to work. It wasn't going to fit, and it wasn't worth the little bit of time we have together. So I concede that I don't have to be linear and I don't have to be rigid, because being linear, lines and rigidity, those are colonial ways, and I'm not a colonizer. So my people are African, and circular is the African way. It's the African way to cry freedom, to stand in solidarity, to be in community. Dr. King knew this. So Dr. King, who despite what a whitewashed, revised history narrative would tell you, Dr. King was a radical freedom fighter who spoke explicitly about and against white supremacy, militarization, and poverty. Dr. Nelson told you that I was an abolitionist. That word means a lot of different things to a lot of people, but I'll tell you what it means to me. When I tell you I'm an abolitionist, I'm telling you that trans women are women and that women's rights are human rights, that love is love, that there will be no Muslim registry on our watch, that borders are racist, that water is life, that Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. I tell you unapologetically, I'm looking for them, I don't see them, but 3 years ago on this stage, my sisters, some friends of mine stood and said this too, and we say Black Lives Matter with no edits, no amendments, no qualifications. We cry freedom and we cry this too. We who know our history know that in the last year of his life, Dr. King was committed to a Poor People's Campaign, and that campaign wasn't just theoretical, it had an action step. So there was disobedience, there was mass demonstrations, there were boycotts, not just of businesses, but of entire industries. And he also lobbied for an action that many would have said was disrespectful, and that I think that those of us who cry freedom in Denver should consider and hold close to our hearts. Dr. King set out to create, we would have called it like a shanty town, a resurrection city. He sought to bring thousands of folks to the National Mall in Washington, D.C. for a show of solidarity, of purpose, and of urban camping. I ask you, if Dr. King had brought his plan to 2019 Denver, would that have been permissible? The plan that he sought to bring, right, to have thousands of poor folks sleeping outside in protest, would that have been allowed in Denver? That Poor People's Campaign, when we were walking here, I saw the tent city today. That was motivated by the idea, y'all, that all people should have a level of freedom that means we have what we need to live. And in that last year of his life, and when I'm hesitating, it's because, so how old was he when they killed him? Right, so I'm 39, so it's a little heavy for me right now. But in that last year of his life, he shifted his focus to this work because Dr. King understood that while we saw all these amazing gains in civil rights, access to voting and integrating schools and repealing racist laws, that while these things were happening, these monumental gains, yet these things hadn't improved the material conditions for the lives of so many Black Americans. And I ask if you can see any parallels between that 1968 America to 2019 Denver. Y'all, just a few short years ago, Denver had all of these things, had a Black mayor, had a Black chief of police, had a Black director of public safety, a Black acting sheriff, had Black folks on the city council and the school board, and had a Black president of the city council, and yet we were second only to Baltimore in lethal police brutality. We in Colorado, we would have the audacity to cry freedom. We have so much to celebrate in this space, y'all. Consider what you've done in the past year. Consider what you've done in the past year. Since the last MLK Marade, Colorado passed Amendment A and became the first state to formally abolish slavery from the Constitution, abolish it like the abolitionists we should strive to be. Here in Denver, I'm so proud, and you should be too, that we finally rejected the sick practice of conversion therapy. We're not going to stand by and allow folks to abuse our young folks, to abuse our LGBTQIA family and neighbors. And thanks to, I'm looking for their signs, I don't see them, but thanks to the amazing freedom fighters at the ACLU of Colorado, thanks to a brave young man named Mickey Howard, thanks to my and our own Freedom Fund, and thanks to the committed progressive city attorneys, Folks aren't being charged for their own jailing. We're no longer charging a $50 bond fee and a $30 booking fee. And we're no longer charging in this city. We're not charging people for the ankle shackles that would track their movements. That's progress. These are big things. And the Marade organizers will tell you that today is a day on, not a day off, and they're so right. We who would cry freedom, we know that we have work to do. We have work to do, and Dr. King taught us that it is up to each of us to find that work and then to deploy it. For me, that work is freedom work. As anyone who knows me knows, I really hate cages, y'all. I really, really don't like cages. So many folks nowadays want to talk about mass incarceration, and as an abolitionist, I'm glad to see these conversations, but I'm concerned that people are talking about these things in the abstract and not recognizing how our decisions are contributing to mass incarceration here. Mass incarceration is locking asylum seekers in cages. You know, there's banners around this city, and I heard Sister Banks tell us that, refugees and immigrants are welcome here, but are they? I hope so, because there's an immigrant prison just up the road. And in that immigrant prison, people are held who haven't even been charged with crimes. Audre Lorde taught us that the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. And yet our neighbors, this gets me, our neighbors must file petitions asking to be here. Our neighbors who've come up from the south, coming north to rejoin family or for better lives. This is occupied Mexico as much as it is America. And this land is indigenous land. This land is Arapaho and Apache and Cheyenne. And while I don't think that those folks would say they own this land, I think that they would recognize that they don't subscribe to those colonizer notions, but it's a painful irony. It's a painful irony that black and brown folks and Afro-Latinas coming up from Honduras and Guatemala have to ask permission to be in this land. So we cry freedom for those folks coming north. They belong here. Ingrid and Jeanette, they belong here. We cry freedom because migration is a human right. We cry freedom because this state still allows the death penalty. And no, we don't implement as frequently as Texas. And with all respect to Texas, not being as bad as Texas is not supposed to be the standard to which we aspire. Mass incarceration is putting ankle shackles on our neighbors to track their movements. Mass incarceration is that when I leave this space today, I'm going to go back to the Denver cage and post bonds and pay ransom for neighbors who can't afford to do so. Y'all, we're giving tickets to people for being poor. And we speak to freedom. We are arresting poor people for sleeping on benches after the park closes. That's happening. There's power in names, y'all. There's power in how we name things, whether it's naming ourselves or naming injustice. When we named the Colorado Freedom Fund, we were conscious to name it this way. We didn't name ourselves a bail fund or a bond fund because we named ourselves after that which we want, not which we don't want. Y'all heard the young brother this morning speak about bail reform? I hope you did. That was powerful. It was a sermon. So we who know our history know that in this 39th year, Dr. King became too dangerous. He taught us that our lives begin to end the day that we become silent about the things that matter, people that matter, Black lives mattering. Almost 3 years ago, some of my friends disrupted this march. I understand why that was unpopular, and I know it was uncomfortable for many. I know there had to be surely someone who objected to my being asked to speak, and I'm deeply thankful for Dr. Howard and Ms. Shipman and Dr. Nelson for this opportunity, because I also know that they know that you can't pluck me from us. I stand up here, but I remain of us, with us. And I know that the actions in 2016, while my being invited may be controversial to some, I know that the women who took this stage in 2016, they cried freedom too, as do those folks involved with planning this Marade. I know that the women who took this stage, theirs was a spirit of Dr. King, of Assata Shakur, of freedom fighters, of revolutionaries. Y'all, in the months before the 2016 Marade, I swear I haven't moved, the deputies in this city, they killed Michael Marshall. And as our young brother told you this morning, he was being held on a $100 ransom, $100. So 2 days from today, less than 48 hours from now, I have to turn myself into jail. In less than 2 days, I have to surrender. After 4 years of fighting a case from 2015, an incident in which I committed the unforgivable crime of talking back to a cop while black. I'll spare you the details. The arrest was live streamed, it's all online, but in 2015, I was arrested for talking back to a cop, but the difference between myself and Mr. Marshall and Sandy Bland is I lived to tell the tale. I was sentenced to 90 days jail. I'll start serving on Wednesday. And when he sentenced me, the sentencing judge told me, I see people here who were there at my trial, the sentencing judge told me that my mistrust of police was misplaced. He told me that since nothing he could say would fix me, maybe 3 months jail would. Y'all, 90 days, not long ago, and just up the road, a Colorado cop whose name doesn't deserve to come out of my mouth raped a woman in his custody while he was on duty, while he was supposed to be transporting her from a hospital. Guess how much jail time they gave him? They gave him 90 days. He's gonna be out before I am. So it shook me when I read it. And understand, my background is in indigent criminal defense. I don't want people in cages, but even this shook me. This isn't ancient history. It's not 1968 even. It's not Selma or Montgomery. God bless those cities. It's Denver now. And so I cry freedom in a very personal way, and it's why my speech didn't work anymore, because I'm just counting down the hours to go turn my body over to this state. I was taught that we who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. I'm tired, y'all, but I'm not ready to rest. And I hope you aren't either. I stand in this moment of privilege asking you to find your work and do that work. Because we who know our history and we who honor Dr. King, we understand freedom isn't a zero-sum game. There's enough to go around. My liberation depends on your liberation, and your liberation depends on my liberation. That's how it works. There's a part of me as I'm heading into jail in 2 days. My son said I need to drop a mixtape, but there's a part of me that wonders, what were they thinking? Like, they thought I was radical before? But we know what they were thinking. They were thinking my life didn't matter. They were thinking no one would notice. They were thinking my voice didn't matter. They thought I was alone, and they thought wrong. They think our sisters and brothers in these Colorado cages are alone, but they're wrong about that too. I need to be clear that I'm not special. I'll admit that. My story isn't special. My story is not unique. If you think I'll be the only black woman who's in that cage because I mouthed off to a cop, you'd be wrong. If you think young Mickey Howard is the only one held in that cage on a $10 bond, you'd be wrong. I'm so scared. I'm so scared. I'm so scared that I'll flinch. Can I tell y'all something just because I need witnesses to this fact? If anything happens to me, let me be real clear. I didn't hurt myself. They can't lie on me like they lied on Sandra Bland, okay? And if they tell you otherwise, what you do or don't do in response will let me know if my black life mattered. I wish I could cry freedom to shake this fear, but I'm not there yet. Enough about me. When we cry freedom, we do so in all the ways, y'all. Literally, figuratively, metaphorically. Freedom to live and be paid for your labor. Freedom to rest. Freedom to love and marry and divorce and raise children and move freely across these borders that colonizers brought us when they brought smallpox. Freedom from fear, freedom from poverty, freedom from all that doesn't serve you. Freedom to look at that which doesn't serve you and leave it behind. Those people who don't move in alignment with your liberation, leave them behind. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. As we close, in the tradition of black abolitionists, of black and brown and first people centuries long, from the black church to drum circles, we do call and response. So I'm going to ask you to close with me in bringing the words of Assata Shakur into this space.
Let's go, Liz.
Hey, fam. I know that many of you know these words, and I ask you to say them with me. And if you don't know them yet, then repeat after me or ask your neighbor, touch them with consent. We're going to say the whole thing 3 times in closing. So when we speak these words the first time, we cry freedom softly. We're speaking it to ourselves and to our ancestors. Does that make sense? When we say it the second time, we're going to cry it louder. We're going to cry freedom and call it to each other, to our community. And the final time we cry freedom, we're going to yell it to the heavens. We're going to yell it to our brothers and sisters in that cage. And the cage is in Aurora and Arapahoe and Jeffco and Douglas so that they can hear it too. Okay? It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love each other and support each other. We have nothing to lose but our chains. It is our duty to fight for our freedom.